Pramod Gosavi. Pramod, you and I were just taking a walk down memory lane. I think we go back like over 10 years at this point. And Pramod, you're an investor, but we met back when you were at VMware and I was a startup at Criticism. But why don't you introduce yourself a little bit? Today we're going to talk about the state of cyber for customers and all the trends that are going on. But let's start with your baseball card. I always call it the baseball card. Introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So thanks a lot, Lars, for this opportunity. So as Lars mentioned, I think we met last time when he was at Criticism and I was at VMware. So I was running corporate ventures and corporate strategy at VMware. So this was a traditional CVC group, and we were investing to help VMware with their growth strategy. And that's how we came across Criticism. They were developing a tool for mobile testing, and uh, we invested in Criticism, and eventually we acquired at VMware. But I stayed in touch with Lars. I think I was very excited about his second company with Instana, which had heard really good things about what they were doing in monitoring, particularly in the cloud native environment. So I chased him quite a bit, but were not able to get a deal done. Eventually, they did really well and sold to IBM. But I have a lot of respect for Lars as an entrepreneur, so I stayed in touch. I've been meeting him for coffee a bunch of times, and happy to chat with him today.
And today you're an investor. Tell us a
Yeah,
little bit about 11.2 Capital, Pramod, what you're doing there.
yeah. So I left VMware about 2020. We were investing on a lot of the new areas like cybersecurity, DevOps, AI, cloud ops. We are mostly doing Series A to Series C. So I joined 11 Capital on the institutional side. And one other thing that really pushed me over there is the emergence of data, AI, and also cybersecurity. So those are the three trends that I saw very heavily in 2020, and I wanted to be involved at early stages. So here we invest at early stage, so it's Series A and before. And I focus on data, AI, cybersecurity. Also spend some time on fintech, dev tools, and cloud infrastructure, but mainly I would say like data, AI is sort of the foundation of most of the investment that we do. Like we look at companies whether they're solving sort of risk and fraud, but we look at them as more of a data play. Same thing with on the dev tools, also more of a data play. So that I would say is like a common theme across all of my investment themes.
Mm-hmm. And Pramod, you're one of my favorite thinkers on LinkedIn. We're going to share your LinkedIn profile in the show notes, but I think I enjoy your posts because they're a mix of great memes, but also deep thinking. And one post from a few weeks ago actually really resonated with me, which was that of there's a need of a 5-tran for data. And me coming from data as well, that's why it resonated with me. And maybe you can talk a little bit about what you posted there and give us a state of cyber. And I know you had some visuals to share as well, but
Yeah,
why don't we start there, like state of cyber?
yeah. So let me just start sharing.
Great. And for the people watching this on YouTube, they can see the slide. And then for everyone who's listening, we can talk a little bit about the stack slide. We'll include it in the show notes, but what we're seeing here on the screen.
Yeah, so the state of cyber right now, the whole industry, I would say, is give and take about $200 billion. Half of that is about products, half of that is security. And in products, you have this what we call as, some people call it platform, I call it like suites, right? So each of the suites, they protect one particular attack vector. So the cyber industry started actually with network security, like a firewall. So when internet started and when the servers started talking to each other, we needed a firewall to protect the data being shared, and particularly hackers that are coming in and stealing our data. So I would say the industry started with network security. So you see this, the first pillar here. Then it went into endpoint security when it really happened during the PC and the client era, right? So previously the computing was mostly sort of a mainframe, but when we started using PCs, the viruses became very important, and similar sort of intent is to protect hackers from stealing data from you. So that was the second biggest pillar, and still there's a lot of funding. The third pillar that has come about in the last 10 years, and then Lars has been has been on the journey through Instana, and what he was doing today is cloud security. So this has been a new pillar. It's mainly because a lot of the infrastructure has moved from on-prem to cloud. The fourth pillar is identity. So this is people. So people are logging into applications, people are reading, writing data. So that really becomes a big attack. So overall, I would say like these are the four big pillars or horsemen of cybersecurity. So every CISO spends considerable amount in that. Then what you see on the on the left side here is more what I call as a control plane. So these are like platforms, so public cloud, it is on-prem infrastructure. You have operating systems, big platforms like Microsoft, Oracle. Then you have enterprise systems like HR and others. So these are mainly, I would say, sort of enterprise systems and data collections. So SIM is is a product that you suck in all of your security events and data, and you do analytics. So I'll just pause here a bit because I don't want to get into the other things. So what's happening today is, as I mentioned, every CISO starts investing in these four platforms, but cyber is more or less like a cat and mouse game. Like the hackers are always sort of ahead of defenders. They're coming up with new schemes. Like for example, in identity, you have your password, but password is not enough. Somebody can hack. So then you create a MFA, which is a multi-factor authentication. Now hackers also hack that multi-factor authentication using some other means. Then you go to another way to protect this, right? So that has been like a classic, like a cat and mouse game. So if you look at a typical enterprise, like a large enterprise, like about 78% of them, they have more than 50 tools. And some of the big banks, they even can have like tools in the hundreds, like 100, 150, like some of the big banks, right? And
Incredible.
it's mainly because they want to really protect every single attack vector. And also a lot of times, like a lot of these products they claim to be good at like 3 or 4 things, but they're really good at like 1 or 2. So then they end up buying sort of redundant tools because, hey, this particular tool does a better job with serverless, it doesn't do a good job with containers. So you end up sort of buying a lot of tools. So that's where the state of the industry is today, is mainly CISOs are just buying a lot of point products to protect every other way, like every single new attack vector comes about. And where does the attack vector come about? Like a lot of times it comes about from the business actually. So the business practices change. Like for example, a big attack vector that came up recently is remote work. So during COVID, all of us started working remotely, and now sort of hybrid work is here to stay. So you're going to work in the office for like 2-3 days and 2-3 days from home. So you still need tools to protect the employees when they're working from home, when they're working for cafes or traveling. So that becomes a new attack vector to protect your enterprise from. And then and hackers are always sort of coming up in newer and newer ways to attack, like with AI. I think we'll talk about that. Is like a big tool in the hands of hackers to attack. So I'll just take a pause here. So this is where the industry is today. So it's sort of constantly sort of buying point tools and trying to protect themselves.
And so with each one of these pillars, I'm looking at your 4 big pillars on the right of the slide: network, endpoint, cloud, and identity. There was usually a company associated with that as well, right? I would
Yeah.
say for network, it was probably Palo Alto, starting out with that. And then, well, they're also doing everything today. I'm trying to think. Cloud security today, I would say we're even in the second generation of tools, right? If not third. The first tools came out during the 2010s.
Yeah.
And then, okay.
Yeah. So I think just on that front, right? So you're right. So currently, I would say we are like a third generation in all of these tools. So network security initially started with Cisco. They own the router and the switches. They came up with a firewall, and then Palo Alto came up with what they call as a next generation firewall, which is more of a distributed firewall. And that continued for a long time. And then recently, there's a third generation. The third generation is what we call as SASE, which is even more distributed. So the Palo Alto was just distributed in the data center, and now SaaS is distributed across all of your network, like cloud, and everything. So on network, we are in the third generation. On the endpoint, same thing. That the industry started with Symantec and McAfee sort of protecting the endpoint, and then we saw a bit of next generation with like Silence and others, which sort of took what was the signature based, converted it into AI, and then what we see right now is sort of a third generation, which is like an EDR, and also we are seeing a fourth generation, which is like EDR is really become like an XDR, where you're not even just looking at your data at your endpoint, but looking more into other pieces of data. Same thing with cloud security. It really started with startups. So there's a bunch of startups that started in early 2010s. Palo Alto ended up buying a lot of them and created a cloud security suite. Then you see another sort of next generation startup like Orca and Wiz sort of come about. So that's where we are. Identity has been a sort of it was quiet for a while, like Microsoft and Oracle and IBM, like the system owners, they owned identity. And for a long time, it was thought that you cannot own identity unless you own a system or a platform. But that changed when cloud came about, because now you have like identity to protect and orchestrate in the cloud. And that's what got Okta the break. And Okta has really surprised me. Like it's more than like a $2 billion industry right now, just orchestrating identities in the cloud. But overall, I mean that space is still challenging for startups, mainly because like now previously it used to be one big monopoly. Now there's sort of a duopoly between Okta and Microsoft.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then, I'm looking at your smaller. By the way, these are all your data sources as we get to the level above. But I also see public cloud. I see CM logging, right? Which to me that's Splunk, now owned by Cisco. I don't even know, did the acquisition close? We'll just assume it closes. And then even the cloud vendors have their own built-in cloud native tools, right? I mean, if I take AWS as an example, they have Security Hub. They have their asset inventory with config. They have threat detection with guard duty. They have audit manager for compliance, right? Like the platforms have their own security tools, right? GCP, Azure, Oracle, and AWS. What about them in this? Like, what about those players in this market? Like, is that, where do you see them here? Are they?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good question. So there are two nuances to that. One is, what they always call as like a fox guarding a hen house, right? So, and that has always been a paradigm in security, is that you cannot have the platform do its own security. You just need a third pair of eyes sort of do it, because you just don't know if these guys are hiding anything or they're being too lax about it, right? So same thing happens in endpoint security, is that Microsoft was never like a very legitimate vendor. People didn't trust it. Microsoft even had free tools, but people did buy it. They would buy a third party like a Symantec and McAfee. The same thing is happening in the cloud. But cloud, it's I think cloud was a little bit different than the other platforms like endpoint and network. Is the cloud guys actually moved in very, very fast. Like, so once they realized that their customers have these security problems, as you mentioned, like AWS came up with a lot of offering. Microsoft acquired a bunch of companies to do it. But I think at the end of the day, it's whether the customer really trusts them. And also on the vendor side is, can they actually monetize this? Like, so can Microsoft say, hey, pay me same as you'd pay a Palo Alto, because people are just like, hey, it's your platform, you have to give me some discount, like it's really your problem, like you should be protecting it, right? So one is on the economic side, like can they really continue developing those best of the breed tools? And that has always never been the case, that like Microsoft was never able to monetize its antivirus products. The second part of the puzzle is basically the multi-cloud environment. So So most large enterprises, they have at least 2 to 3 cloud providers. Like they will have AWS as a default, and then they'll have Azure, or they'll have another one, like a small one, like a GCP, or maybe like a GDPR cloud. So now, if you need to have like a common set of policies across all of the clouds, you do need like a third-party vendor, because like all of these clouds also, they're trying to become like Snowflake. They're trying to come up with their own sort of bespoke configuration. So the same configuration on AWS doesn't work with Azure, and that's why you need a third-party vendor like a Palo Alto or a Wizard or Arca to protect cloud.
Perfect. And I'm looking at your chart. Public cloud, on-prem, org data, Microsoft, asset DB ticketing, and then the SIEM. Yeah. Okay. So, and then you mentioned a few KPIs here. Like a large bank, they have up to 150 tools.
Yeah.
Always taking the best tool for the right job, right? A little bit like the best of breed versus platform discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So this is my landscape of problems and tooling that I have now. Should we move up to the next layer on top of this?
So yes, as I mentioned, like the security TAM is about 200 billion. 100 is product and 100 is services. So if you look at like what services are doing, is they are targeting some of the corner cases. They're actually doing some of this stuff that I'm talking about, is gathering data and doing use cases like risk, compliance, vulnerability management. So what I'm proposing here is like right now, what CISO does is just buys a lot of tools at the bottom, right? There's no sort of a data platform in security as you see in IT. You even see that on the finance side, on the marketing side, they all have their data platform where they aggregate all of the data and they run applications on top of it. Unfortunately, cyber has been left behind. And there are a couple of reasons why that has happened. Is some of it is like just a tenure of a CISO. The CISO stays in the company for a couple of years, and to create some sort of this data platform, it really takes like a 4 to 5 years sort of a digital transformation, right? So there are few reasons we can point to why this has happened, but this is what I'm proposing here is, and this has to really come from the board and the CEO, because if the CISO leaves, you still need to continue this work. So what I'm proposing here is really, you have all of the data with you, like you have all of the systems, you have these 4 pillars, and you gather all of your data in a platform. So that platform used to be a SIM before. But what I'm proposing is not a SIM. SIM is basically just ingesting alerts, events, and it used to be mainly for compliance and some sort of a threat analysis. Here, what I'm proposing is something sort of a common data platform, and you can still do what a SIM does, but SIM is like one of the use cases. So what I'm proposing here is to gather all of the data, normalize it, and it also makes you vendor proof. So for example, if you switch from like a CrowdStrike or a SentinelOne, you can still use all of your threat analysis and SOC, which sits on the other side of it. Like you're not really married to one vendor once you normalize all of the data. Yeah. So initially, you can start with what I'm proposing here is sort of long tail use cases. So you don't have to like reinvent the wheel. Like you don't have to do what a firewall does or an endpoint does, but start with some of the long tail use cases like automation. Like they're like simple use cases, like if somebody logs in at 2:00 from like say like a different country, you need to stop it, or you need to challenge the person with MFA and all of that stuff. So these are really the attack vectors that are not addressed in the tools right now, and you can do so much rich policies and rich rich enforcements, once you have this data and the automation platform. Vulnerability management is something also that has traditionally not been addressed. So the more data you have with vulnerability, the more like what these applications are doing, who is logging to the applications, and how many vulnerabilities you have in the infrastructure. You can do a much better job. And risk and governance, I feel like that just needs to be modernized. Like we are still like in a world where we are using like spreadsheets and like people to pull a lot of this data ad hoc. So that whole thing should get automated every time anything gets updated. Like risk and governance should get updated on its own. And on the right side, what you see, this data warehouse, data ponds. So this would be your sort of modern SIM. So you would basically go away from a traditional SIM, which is more like just sucking data and putting in your traditional storage. You would go into a data warehouse like a Snowflake or a Databricks. And I really like this concept of data ponds. So what data ponds is like really, so what was broken previously was this whole concept of needle in a haystack. So the more data that you pick and you need to find like one anomaly or one problem, you're trying to find a needle in a haystack. And so that's like a classic problem with the SIM. So here I'm proposing sort of a data pond, which is, start with like one or two sources of data, like start with like an endpoint, network, identity, and see if you can find something there before you get in more data. And then if you don't find it there, then you get more pieces of data. So you are basically doing more of like this distributed analytics, but reaching to the end state in a very programmatic way, like you are not bombarding yourself. So what happened previously is like it became like a big data problem. So people started using tools like Hadoop and everything, which I feel like it's just going in a very wrong direction. Like you're not solving the problem. You're just creating another problem using Hadoop, right? So to me, I feel like the right way to do it is to do this distributed analytics, where you start with this thing called ponds, where you have a few sources of data and you see in that pond first before putting in more water to the pond likes.
So we've covered 3 different layers by now. At the bottom, we have the data sources. On top of that, we have the data fabric with 4 capabilities, right? Ingest, normalize, enrich, flatten. On top of that, the third layer, we got 2 boxes here. We got the long tail use cases, automation, vulnerability management, identity analytics, risk and governance. And then we have the second box is data warehouse and data ponds. If I were to put logos on this right now, let's start with the data warehouse. There's obviously Snowflake, but there's also a company like Panther Labs, right? I think they use Snowflake themselves.
Yes, I just want to I would just like to make a distinction there. So Panther is, they position themselves as a modern SIM based on Snowflake.
Yeah.
So they're more of a new SIM compared to a warehouse. I mean, they can still give you the same sort of security warehouse functionality, but they want to be more of a SIM. So here, what I'm saying is this is not a SIM actually. This is a pure data platform. You don't think about application first, then you build applications on top of it.
So really, because we had a few people from the modern data stack, and I guess now they call it back. They've gone back to calling it analytics on this podcast. And me coming from the data world, I just thought, I looked at security. I posted about this a couple of days ago. I said, like, look, for me, the modern security stack is just an analytics stack purpose built for security use cases.
Exactly.
But we can apply all the principles we've learned in the last 10 years with the rise of the cloud warehouses, where you ingest data. That's your Fivetran, your ELT use case, or your cloud query use case. And I think that's your data fabric layer, right? That's sort of the ELT or ETL layer of your stack.
Yeah.
And then on top, and then those are our data sources, and we have to store that data somewhere. That place could be the data pond or the data warehouse. And with that data ready, we can now build use cases, right? Which now these are your capabilities like automation. So is that a good summary of your stack chart so far?
Yes. So you're right. So the data warehouse are really like Snowflake, Databricks. You can also use AWS S3. AWS has its own security data lake. You can either use all of them. You can also have the data in your own VPC. Like you don't have to put it out there publicly. What's missing here is the data fabric thing, and we can talk about it. later on. And then the long tail use cases also are missing right now. Once you have data fabric, you can start building. The third layer that we didn't talk about is like the what I call as like a cyber 360 intelligence. So if you're a CISO or your board and you need to know what's happening in your enterprise, like are the tickets going down? Like how many tickets do I have every day? How many events? I brought this new tool in, like, is this actually helping me? So you need to know first, I think two things, right? The one is your security posture improving, like month by month, year by year, or is it? And the second thing is just operationally, how is it going? Like, are we throwing people? Are the tools doing the job? And that is where this layer comes into picture. So the funny thing enough is like some of the large enterprises like banks, they have a team of like 10, 15 people. Like all they do is they pull data on a weekly basis into spreadsheets and they massage it for the board meeting, they massage it for the all hands meeting. It's just ridiculous to me that we still do that in 2024. The whole thing needs to be automated. And there's a lot of very good tools actually available that I feel like cyber doesn't take advantage of. Like, you have this BI tools like Tableau and Looker. You just suck in the data and you can get like amazing analytics and amazing dashboards that, you can use in your team meetings. But the problem is really has been the data. Like, so the problem is like none of these vendors that you see, your network security endpoint vendor, they share data because they want to control everything. They want to have their own dashboard. But again, it's very siloed. So that's why, I'm proposing to have this sort of a common data fabric. So once you have the data, you can like literally just push it into this Tableau and Looker, and within a few minutes, you get very amazing analytics.
Yeah. So I want to double click on a few things you mentioned. Number one, that the security vendors don't really want to share data. That's one thing. Number two is that we need digital transformation and security, just like the same way we've done digital transformation in every other industry. And then the third one is sort of like what happens at the CEO and board level from a reporting perspective. That they're actually looking. I've heard Tableau many times over in security, and I thought like this is just it feels to me the wrong dashboard. But okay, we can debate that. So let's talk about security vendors not sharing data, right? Because coming from an analytics world, I will always go back to the 5-tran analogy. Now is the innovation was okay. We now have APIs. We can call these APIs to extract data, and then we normalize them. And the easy part is building the connector. The hard part is maintaining it, right? Because the APIs change and the data changes. Like if I run Palo Alto Networks or Zscaler, whatever, today, is there a way for me to get data out of those platforms?
Yes and no. Like, so some of these guys, like if you go to like a Wiz, Prisma, or Arcon, a cloud security side, and even like one of our portfolio companies, Jupiter One, so they suck in all of the data on behalf of their customer, and then they run analytics on top of it. So now if you go and tell them like, hey, can you share the data? Can you give me an API? I want to do X, Y, and Z. The question is like, what do you want to do with it, right? If you want to do anything like a functionality, we can build it for you. So the question has always been like, why do you need it? And then it's like a proprietary format, and it just becomes a headache to support the API and the data as things change. So this is why I'm sort of proposing here is to actually go down to the system platform level, right? So what a cloud security platform is doing is they're pulling all the data from the cloud providers like AWS, GCP. So you need to pull the data from those platforms directly, and you can also pull it from your Prisma or Wiz, a different kind of view to it. Here I'm not proposing that you're eventually trying to replace like a Wiz or a Prisma. I think what you're trying to do is you are supplementing those tools for your own use cases, like bespoke use cases initially, that the provider cannot provide. Because to me, I think if you have like one use case that Prisma doesn't provide or Wiz doesn't provide, your investment, millions of dollars of investment, is still at stake because that hacker can find that one one crack and get it right. So as a CISO, you need to protect all of your cracks, and that's why you basically build a data platform and build that feature on top of it. And unfortunately, that's the nature of the game, because these big platforms are not going to do everything for everybody.
Right, right. And I like how I think this is clear from the image, but just to stress that point, that you're not suggesting that people should rip out their tools. You're suggesting is that they leave their tools and then take that data and join it with other data, right? And
Yeah,
so that's how you get more complete coverage. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. And maybe as a analytics guy, I looked at this world. Well, how does cybersecurity get data, right? And I see three ways, maybe four, right? Number one is agentless, right? So you call the cloud APIs, the same APIs that a Terraform uses to deploy, or Pulumi to deploy resources. You call those APIs to get configuration data about the resources. That for me is one data source. The second data source are logs. And your boxes here is it's the scene, right? Where you
Yeah,
ingest the logs. And the third one are agents, where you're trying to look into Kubernetes pods. Those to me, and then maybe the fourth one would be, okay, you have your supporting systems, your existing cybersecurity tools, they have APIs too. Maybe they have some data sharing. Like, to me, those are the four data sources that I can tap. Um, am I missing anything in there conceptually, or that's how I look at the world?
yeah, that's what it is. Yeah.
Okay. So then, um, who do you see playing today in the data fabric space? Do you see anyone, or is that still up for grabs?
Yeah, it's up for grabs. So we invested in a company called Lean.dev. So it's sort of
Mhm.
creating that data fabric. And there's another company in the space called Avalar Security, and then there's another company. So there are three companies that I'm aware of that is doing this data fabrics. So people also confuse this with like companies like Panther and Monad that you talked about. So they are what I call as a purpose-built data fabric for SIM use cases, but they are not like
Mhm.
a pure play sort of a data platform. Uh, it's emerging. So that you see it on the vendor side, pure play vendors. But if you look at some of the big platforms like Palo Alto or CrowdStrike, and then Zscaler also is sort of building that internally. So they understand the need. Like, so Palo Alto has gone ahead and built a lot of this data fabric, starting from it's like when they acquired Demisto, they were already doing some of it or the SOAR use case. So they've continued on that. So I would say like Palo Alto probably has like the most sort of mature data platform, and after that, Zscaler is thinking about it, and then you have the pure plays like Lean and then Avalar that is doing it. It's still early because I think to me so there are two use cases to this data platform. So one use case is security founders and security companies like yours, right? Like when you start a company, first thing that you do is you create a integration and data platform. You'll connect to your SIM and like your ticketing, and you'll connect to your Microsoft and public clouds, right? So, and every single company, there are like 2,000, 3,000 companies out there. Every single company is reinventing the wheel over and over again. And most of it is the same thing what is happening in the data world. Like when before Fivetran came in, every single enterprise was actually building this integration platform, right? When Fivetran came in, they just said it's not worthwhile for you to. So we are proposing the same thing here for the security vendors. The second persona for this is the security engineers in a CISO organization, and you see sort of early days to the security engineers. So right now, every CISO has about 5 to 10 security vendors to actually do some of this long tail use cases. Hey, can you hook this up? Can you do this? The problem is they're not very productive today because they don't have the data platform. And they actually cannot invest in a data platform, because if you're a security vendor and if you're going to sell the tools, it makes sense for you to build it. But if you're inside a company, you're a 5-10 person security engineering organization, like can you spend like 6 months to a year developing this platform? No, I mean, it doesn't make sense, right? So that's what we are proposing is like, you go to a third-party platform like a Lean, and we'll give you all of the data, right? We will keep it updated. And then your engineers are productive from day one. You can build all of the interesting use cases that you want to build on top of.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, you talked a little bit about the CISO, and maybe it's, a mix of first, second, and third generation CISOs, but I feel like in security, there's a little bit of an existing world that operates on dashboard, right? I look at dashboards, I create tickets, and I try to close the loop with engineering to see if the ticket got fixed. And maybe I put some SLAs, right? But what you're suggesting here with your stack, now that skill set is not sufficient anymore, right? Because now I need data engineering skills. I need to extract this data, right? And I actually need software engineering skills as well, because I need to integrate that data somewhere into my automation, right? And into, I guess the category would be SOAR, service automation and response. But really, I need, and then if you still need knowledge of the underlying infrastructure, right? So you need to know a little bit about AWS, GCP, Azure, Kubernetes. Like you need to have some rudimentary knowledge how that stuff works. Number two, you need data engineering skills because you need to be able to extract the data and make sense of it. And then the third one is, well, you're still a security engineer, right? So you need to know security practices and principles and compliance. So that Venn diagram, it's pretty tricky to get someone who knows all three. And is what you're suggesting is we need CISOs that move into that direction.
Yes. Also, I think to your point, you also need CISOs who are comfortable building products in-house, right? So it's very easy to just go and push a vendor and say, I need this use case. Can you do it for me? Or go buy another tool, right? Mm-hmm. So you do need CISO or somebody underneath the CISO to with like a product background, like somebody who has built products before. I think the data platform has been a problem. Like, I don't think security engineering can be successful unless you have a data platform, because like I said, it just doesn't make sense for every customer to do this. But once you have a data platform, all you need is someone in the CISO organization who has built products before and start building this. And like I said, I think you don't need to replace EDR. You don't need to go and say, I'll replace Prisma overnight. You start with long tail use cases. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And one thing I didn't see long tail use cases. Can we talk a little bit about those long tail use cases before we get to the C-suite and the reporting? I'm looking at automation here and risk and governance. You mentioned how that's due for an overhaul. Can you talk about like the shortcomings that you see there today and what's required for the industry going forward in terms of product development? What do you see?
Yeah, so if you start with sort of GRC, like the risk and governance, so traditionally it was always it's part of that $100 billion services industry that I talked about. So you engage with Deloitte and PwC, they come and run a process, and they do it almost like a quarterly basis, and you're spending millions of dollars with these guys. So all they're doing is just pulling the data from different platforms. They're running analytics on top of it. So a very simple example is SOC 2, right? So SOC 2 used to be a very manual sort of a process, like spreadsheet oriented. So what Drata and Vanta did, and they were able to do that because of the cloud, and everything is self-serve. You just point them to your cloud, point them to your identity, they pull in all the data, they prepare the work, and boom, like you can get SOC 2 at least on the data side done within a week, right? That's the kind of thing that we need to do for all other compliance, like whether it's HIPAA or is GDPR or is it like FedRAMP. I think is a bit complicated, but so that's on the compliance side. On the risk side, it's just like pulling all of the data, figuring out your exposure, figuring out your policies. It's still being done manually, and then just a couple of days ago, I was talking to a founder that is building one of this like next generation apps. So there's a bunch of like processes that you can build on top of this. Like for example, a new tool gets added. Like what are the what are the workflows towards risk? Like say you hired like 100 people, like it triggers off different workflows. Or if you have an alert, like a data alert or something, is this like material enough? Should I report it to the SEC? Should I trigger an alarm? There are a lot of work, like small workflows that sits on top of it. And all of that actually can be enabled and can be live when you have a data platform. Once you have this trigger from an endpoint, like some data leak or something, you just trigger this workflows. So that's like another use case on the GRC side.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, and I think like in GRC, it seems to be a two-horse race right now between Strata and Vanta, and then you have other smaller companies like SecureFrame and ThoroPass. But yeah, I mean, we basically saw a lot of innovation there in the last 3 years. And then, okay, so the data warehouse, the Snow, I mean, AWS is security, right? They're talking about their security data lake. We have Snowflake. Can we talk a little bit about the Cyber 360 intelligence, right?
Yeah.
You have the Tableau and the Looker logo here. Reminder: Tableau belongs to Salesforce. Looker belongs to Google, more specifically GCP. I've also seen Grafana. In
Yeah.
fact, Prowler, a very popular open source CSPM, just announced funding, and their product is basically Grafana, right? So we see that. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about C-suite.
Yeah.
What do you see in terms of intelligence and in reporting?
Yeah. So some of it exists today, some of it doesn't exist, and that's what we're trying to sort of evangelize. Is coming from a board level. Like, what does the board want to see? Like, hey, I'm spending, like, say, at a big bank, I'm spending like close to like a few $100 million on security. How is that spending being allocated? Like, how many tools do I have in my organization? Like, a lot of times they don't even know the number of tools that they have in the organization, right? So starting with like the tools that I have, and then on an operating basis, like a very simple thing is like CrowdStrike. Like, you say you have a endpoint, right? A CrowdStrike alerts, right? So just look at on a week by week basis, are they trending down, they going up, like what are the categories, is it going up when I hire more people, like, or when I start a new branch? So that would be like one of them. The second thing very important is like the tickets, right? Like, how long is taking me to like resolve this ticket? Like, is there any backlog? You can go down to like analyst level, like which analyst is working on which ticket. Also, like the security knowledge and know-how is very important. Like, do I have the right people? Actually, do I have the right analysts? Like, are they able to sort of resolve these tickets? What's happening with those tickets? And then and also, like, one thing is like that was very popular in IT. At VMware, we had a company that sort of did it is to figure out the ROI of your spending. Like, say if you go and do a transformation, like you went from a McAfee semantic to a CrowdStrike, right? So what does it mean in terms of like my operational efficacy? Like, how is that changed, right? So you can come up with some KPIs, and you can basically monitor that. So to me, I think like cyber needs to have metrics and KPIs, and you need to sort of follow and monitor those metrics on a regular basis. So it could be like multiple levels of reporting, right? Like at a lower level, like somebody who is under a CISO, they can look at like operational efficiency on a people basis. Like, are they, how many do I have? Like, do I have like some of these tickets are just taking too long to resolve. And then when you come at a CISO level, like, how many tools do I have? How many tickets do I have? How many alerts do I have? And then when you go at a board level, it's another level of abstraction. It's like, how much am I spending? Uh, and why am I spending, right? and am I like protected enough? So it goes a little bit more on the GRC side. It's like, am I protected enough, right, compared to my peers? So you can also bring in third-party data into this reporting. And as far as like sort of dashboarding, again, to me, you just use what you are used to. Like if you're a Tableau house or a Looker house or a Grafana house, you just use one that your company already has. So you don't need to sort of go to another new.
Yeah. Do you what do you see in terms of measuring risk exposure? Is there some sort of overarching score, or is it just many different, like how do companies measure risk exposure?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think it's more of an art than a science, and it
Yeah.
has not been productized properly. So Deloitte and PwC will come and say, "Hey, I can't tell you. I just need to run a process to do it." But at the end of the day, I do feel like there are some benchmarks, there are some KPIs that you can do. So it's 80-10-20 rule where I feel like there is some 80% where you can productize it. And then 20% is more sort of going bespoke into your own organization. So every organization has their own sort of unique products and the way they operate, the risks that they take in terms of products and employees. That needs to be quantified. So that is like, to me, like a 20% thing. 80% has to be productized, like you should know what it is. If your GRC is like 100% bespoke, there's something really wrong with you. Like either you're not running your company properly.
Yeah. So then maybe to close this off before we go into platformization, um, where do you see your opportunity? Where do you see opportunities for founders? And maybe you can repeat real quick the bets you've placed already, or at least the investments. You talked about Lean Dev, Avanar Security. So number one, where do you see potential opportunities for founders? And they should pick up the phone and talk to you. And what investments have you done so far?
Yes, I think founders are already doing that now. Like I would say, like CrowdStrike and some of the big vendors, they started off very well is to create like a single cloud native data platform, like create like a single agent and a data. Like you yourself invest internally for doing some of this thing like ingestion, normalization, enrichment, right? So the founder that is coming in, I think they should think of a data platform first rather than a use case. I think people are just too much like focused on the use case. Like for example, like AI security. Oh, I can tell you like what's going on the DLP side, a lot of that side. But what they're not thinking in terms of the data platform, like what kind of data do I need to really pull in? Like, do I need to go talk to Microsoft to get me new data? I think that's where someone needs to sort of start with the data first. And once you start with the data first, you're going to create a lot of moat because you're going to go and create some of this like data. You're going to get some data that your competitors cannot get, right? Like for example, in I've been saying that somebody needs to go talk to OpenAI and Microsoft about getting some additional pieces of data, and if you do it, that's your moat, right? So to answer your question, I think start with data first. Second is, I think, use some of the data tools. I think we are not using some of the tools like, Apache Flink, and you talk about Grafana, and you talk about like some of the tools that are very popular on the data side, like there's Pino and others. We need to start using those tools on the cyber side. So those are the opportunities. So in terms of the investments, we invested in Lean last year, which we are quite excited is creating this data platform. And previously we invested in a company called Jupiter One that is focusing on an asset database. It's pulling in all of the data from the cloud, and it adds an identity graph. I mean, a full sort of a graph on top of it, and then you can do a lot of use cases on top of it, like compliance and posture management. So we are very. And then the third company that we invested very early on was Strike Ready, which is on the SOC side. So it's sort of a modern SIEM that sucks in a lot of data. It overlays some of the threat intel on top of it. It enriches it. And it's very interesting. Like a lot of companies use that tool along with their SIEM and other tools because exactly to the point, like they're not getting what they need from their SIEM. So they need an additional tool for their stuff.
Yeah, plenty of opportunity. I looked at Lean. That seems pretty exciting. The single API for security data. In fact, because I hear that a lot myself, where people tell me, "Well, can I just get this data from an API so I can trigger my workflow?" So that's a very exciting company. Okay, so I think we've covered the opportunities here. I'm going to call it the data fabric stack. Should we maybe switch gears to what we've heard? What Nikesh has announced and Palo Alto Networks, and maybe platformization. Maybe why don't I go ahead and just share my screen real quick and look at Palo Alto's investor deck, or actually, it was the deck for the quarterly call.
Yeah.
And what we can see here is the magic word, platformization. And so maybe, I don't know, is this an appropriate slide for you to talk about that strategy a little bit?
I created a new post on it.
Great. Let's
so
pull that up.
We can start. So let me just share it.
Yeah, I'm going to stop sharing here.
Can you see this?
There we go. Yep, you can see this. Do you want to go into presentation mode maybe?
Yeah. Can you see this?
There. Yep, we can see it. This is fine too.
Okay. Let me see if I can blow it up a bit.
So what we're seeing here while you're
is this better?
Prepping it. Yeah, this is great. Yeah. So for the people who are listening and not watching, we see three different silos here, like stovepipes, the true platform with the likes of VMware, Microsoft, Oracle, AWS, Snowflake, Salesforce, the consolidation suites with Symantec, HP, Cisco, SentinelOne, and then the platformization, Palo Alto and CrowdStrike. So those are the three things. But let's hear directly what tell us.
Yeah.
When you think about platformization here.
Yes. So I wanted to sort of just go back, like at a pedantic level, talk about platform suites and platformization, right? So I think the word platform gets misused quite a bit. Like people want, they create a product, they want to say we are not a feature, we are a platform, right? But what they really mean is we are not one feature, we are a bunch of features. Like we are sort of a suite of features. We are just not that one thing, right? So that's where that's one of the misheard term, but I think that's fine. I think people like to say platform, and then everybody says platform, right? So to me, the true, like, a definition of platform is like a platform, like somebody can actually sit on top of it, stand on top of it, and they can be sustainable, right? So you can build businesses on top of a platform. So traditionally, the platforms have been at a lower level, like Microsoft is an operating system, Oracle is a database, Snowflake is a warehouse, and VMware is a virtualization platform. So I can talk a bit about VMware, like why it was a true platform. So VMware spent a lot of like resources trying to be very open. So when they came in, they had to support all of the storage vendors. So they spent a lot of time and resources supporting every single storage vendor out there. They supported every single hardware vendor. They supported every single network vendor. They supported every single application on top of it. So this is what I mean by a true platform, is where you support third party. And when they saw new opportunities coming along, like for example, backup. So the backup changed when VMware came along. But guess what? Like VMware didn't go and say, I'm going to do the backup for you. They opened up all of the data sources. They gave all the snapshot and everything to third party, and voila! Like if you look at a company like a Veeam, it's a $2 billion revenue right now just sitting on top of VMware. I mean, that's to me, it's like a
I'm
true
sorry,
platform.
which company is this?
Veeam. Veeam.
Veeam. Okay.
You look at
V
Veeam, you look
E
VEAM.
VEAM. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like a couple of $1 billion, mainly just doing VMware backup. Then you see companies like Rubrik and Cohesity, same thing. They are multi-billion-dollar companies just doing like VMware backups right now. Right. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a very good example of a true platform where you have multiple successful businesses that sit on top of your platform, and you are actually supporting them as a first-class citizen, and you're not picking favorites. Over time, you do see platforms build some of the applications on top of it, right? So you see Microsoft, they own some of the applications like Word and others, and they keep sort of getting into some of the lucrative applications. But as a platform, they always support a third party, like they invest a lot in that. So to me, I think the true platform are these companies. Coming back to security, I think most of the security products are more like suites. So if you look at a
Yeah.
CrowdStrike or a Symantec, it's a suite of products that protects endpoint, right? You have antivirus, you have detection, you have incident response. Cisco is also a suite. Like Cisco is a suite of like networking product. It's not a platform at all. Like what HP did is they just bought a lot of products and they created a suite of either security or IT, right? So the difference I talk about, like there's no third party that sits on top of a Cisco. There's no third party that sits on top of a Symantec or a HP or a
Yeah.
SentinelOne on a product side. There's a bunch of like services partners that sit on top of Cisco or Symantec, but there's no like a legitimate product company that sits. And the same thing is true with even companies like Palo Alto Networks. So Palo Alto right now is not a platform; it's a consolidation. It's suite. Nobody can sit on top of a Palo Alto. Palo Alto doesn't make that data available. Uh, so this is where the state of the industry is, that everybody says that there's a platform. When it comes to cyber, nobody's a platform. Like there's no third party that sits on top of it, right? So this brings me to this new thing. What Nikesh talks about is a platformization, right? So platformization, like this is my own interpretation of platform, is so the true platform in cyber that can be a platform is a SIM, where you're collecting all of the data, and we talked about it in the previous presentation.
Mm-hmm.
Is and Splunk did a very good job of supporting every single ecosystem vendor. They would invest resources, they'll suck in your data, they'll make the data available. But what happened is it didn't become a platform. I mean, it was becoming a platform about 5 to 7 years ago, when there were applications like Yuba, like a user and entity behavioral analytics came about. Then SOAR came about, which is the automation play. Then there's incident response. But guess what? Like Splunk did not promote a healthy environment. They went and acquired one companies in every segment, and then the whole industry collapsed, because once Splunk gives this away for free, like nobody else can monetize it, right? So the whole sort of industry collapsed, and then also it created competitors. So now you have competitors like Exabeam, you have competitors like Panther. Guess what? If they remain a platform, you could have this like analytics that sit on top of it, and then also Snowflake is another new competitor that came about, because Snowflake is just like, I'm a true platform, I support everybody, come to me, right? So I think they messed up on the strategy side. Like I don't know how much they made out of this acquisitions, but they lost a lot in just like narrative and strategy. So why is that important, right? So if you look at like the two companies, I feel like right now has this whole platformization strategy and vision is Palo Alto and CrowdStrike. And they really coming in from a SIM XDR angle. So what they're saying is, look, just invest in me. Like I'm going to control your SIM XDR. Throw away your Splunk. You don't need Splunk. And then just use me as your like a center of gravity. So SIM is still like a center of gravity for your SOC and compliance and everything. Once you replace Splunk, which to me it's still like a very good sort of a third party vendor, and then you replace with like a Palo Alto or CrowdStrike SIM, you're done basically. Now what happens is that becomes your central strategy for your SOC. Now, what these vendors are saying that, hey, this is not a best of breed versus a platform play. If a new attack vector comes in like AI, like a security for AI, I will still support it. You can still push the data into me. But guess what? In 6 months later, I can go acquire a company, and then guess what? I will support my internal feature better than others. I mean, like Nikesh actually said this in black and white. They said and I agree with him. I think if you have a feature internally, you can do a much better job in terms of like sharing data and creating data, right? So that is obvious. But that's the choice that a CISO has to make is, look, I invest in Palo Alto, CrowdStrike, SIM or XDR or whatever you want to call it. I like a new sort of a best of breed vendor. I go talk to Palo Alto supports it. But Palo Alto comes back and say, look, I bought their competitor and there's much better data integration. Switch your best of breed to me. And that is what they are basically going at, is like you have to switch or you are encouraged or nudged to push. And that will always be the part of the game, because guess what? Your SIM is Palo Alto. They're not doing as good as a job supporting every single best breed long term. I mean, short term, I think they'll still support it because if the customer wants it and they don't have it, they still will do it. But medium to long term, they might not do it because they will say, why don't you just use my feature? So this is the whole platformization thing, which is a lot of this organization will end up becoming like a Palo Alto house or a CrowdStrike house where 80-90% of their security is bought from a single vendor.
Yeah. One logo that I would suggest maybe I'm thinking of Datadog, where Datadog would fit here, because the interesting thing about Datadog is that they come from infrastructure, right? And they've moved into security. So I would probably put them either into consolidation or into platformization here.
Yeah, I think they have a good play because they're very strong on the infrastructure side. They already have the agent there, so they're already collecting some telemetry, so they can collect. So they have, again, they can become a platform, but that's the thing, that they can actually become a platform on the security side, and they can open up the data to other vendors like Wiz and Arca. But the problem is, again, they're not doing that. It's the same problem as what Splunk and ServiceNow is. Like, they want to offer you the whole thing. They're not opening up the data to third party.
Yeah. Which I think we've had this story 10 years ago with the SaaS tools, right? That they first didn't want to give up data because it's like, you should look at my data on my dashboard because I purpose built my dashboard, right? So it feels like a little bit. I've seen this movie 10 years ago in analytics and the modern data stack. Okay, yeah. So that's what's going on with platformization. But for me, a platform is really someone who can build on top of that. And I would agree, like, that's what you can do with the true platforms in your slide. You cannot do that today on Palo Alto and CrowdStrike. I don't know, to the best of my knowledge. Can you?
I think like Splunk, like I said, I think Splunk has a good opportunity. Like, even like you talk about Datadog, I think if you're already an agent there, you open it up for Palo Alto, you open up to Wiz, you open up to best of breed, and let them do security for you, right? And you can still monetize the way VMware and Microsoft monetizes the platform, right? But I think it just not happened. Like, I don't know why it's not happened. I think it will take some time. At one time, actually, I think like Amazon was thinking of doing that, where they said, okay, I will have this one agent that I'm going to share the data with everybody. I mean, they're already a platform anyways, but I think Datadog can be there because you're already there. You already have an agent. Why not just open it up to everybody?
Yeah.
I don't think like a Palo Alto or a CrowdStrike can become like a true platform, because more or less they are analytics layers on top of a platform.
CrowdStrike is.
Like even Palo Alto, like Prisma is a analytics application on top of public cloud. It's not a platform.
Yeah. Can we talk a little bit about how data collection happens in some of these because maybe it's a year, well, 7, 8 months ago, agentless versus agent-based was all the rage, right? That's when Wiz came out with their $100 million fundraising announcement, and they said, "Oh, we're all agentless," and that was all the rage. And I feel like that discussion has disappeared, but maybe can we just dive into that a little bit when we talk about platforms, data collection, exposing data? Is that even a relevant discussion, or was
Yeah.
that just like a positioning and messaging play?
Yeah. So I think so this is another debate, like best of breed versus a platform. It's agent versus agentless, right? So I think what ended up happening is a lot of vendors actually got it wrong. This whole thing about agentless, right? So the vendor that got it wrong, I would say, like I'd name names here, is like companies like Sysdig, Aqua, and others, right? Like they
Right.
they had, and even Palo Alto got it wrong for a while, and then they corrected it. So they said, look, you need a agent there to get that telemetry. You cannot just do the snapshot once a day. You need to have it. And they all went to the CISOs and they said that, hey, agent is better than agentless. So Palo Alto fought that war for almost a year. First with Arca when Arca came in, and then second with Wiz is trying to convince CISOs. But I think where they got it wrong is they did not understand the operational part of it, right? So to me, I have this analogy, and I gave this analogy to one of my cybersecurity analyst friends. So think of you are in enemy land, like let us say you are US, you want to go into Vietnam, you see this whole piece of land. Are you going to send people down there on the ground without knowing what's going on? Like that's just absolute stupidity. So to me, agentless is that air cover. So you go do this air cover. So you take this snapshot, you try to figure out how much damage I have, like what's going on, and you try to cover as much uh, distance and ground as possible. And first you get your hygiene right. Like is there a package that I have which is like really, really old, like somebody pushed it to production, right? So first I think you get your hygiene right with agentless. So to me, agentless is more about getting the hygiene and getting to a known state, like 80-90% state, very quickly. Like that's the fastest way to do it. Like deploying agents in each and every sort of instance is not possible, right? And then you go back with an agent. Like if you want additional sort of security, you go in with an agent, but you don't start with an agent. So this is where I think some of these vendors got it wrong, is just the operational advantage of an agentless versus an agent. And this is more operational than security. Like from a security point of view, I agree with them. Like agent always does a better job than agentless, but operationally agentless is better. So coming back to the data collection, right?
Yeah.
So there are three different data collections here. So one is the API base, where you're just collecting from the underlying platform you're getting from Amazon, AWS. The second one is agentless. Agentless, actually, you're taking your own snapshot. So these guys are actually taking bespoke snapshots that AWS was not providing before. So you had to take it yourself. They might or might not provide it now. And then the third one is like putting your own agent and collecting as much telemetry real time. Like it could be like a real agent, or it could be like an eBPF kind of an agent where you collect everything in real time.
Ooh, eBPF. Yes. That's a whole different podcast we should do about eBPF. Yeah. I mean, because I come from companies, we developed agents, right? Both for mobile apps and then for containers. And currently, I'm working. I'm building a company that is agentless. So I've seen both worlds, and I would also say eventually you need both, but different use cases.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Well, Pramod, we covered a lot of ground. We talked about data fabric. We talked about platformization. Anything else we should cover that we didn't cover to close the loop here? Trying to think of anything. I think we have
No,
it
I think we
all.
covered. Yeah, I think we covered everything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Robert, how can people reach you if they want to follow up? Maybe if
Yeah. So
cybersecurity. engineers want to become a founder, what's the best way?
Yeah, the best way is to just contact me on LinkedIn. Like, you can see me there, and my profile is very public. And if you're missing out, you can just look at. If you're seeing a lot of audio and video stuff, then that's me. So that's very easy to find out. I think that's the best way to reach out to me. Or if you want to send me an email, like my email is very simple. It's like my first name dot last name pramod.gosavi@gmail.com.
There you go. Very easy. And I'm going to repeat that people should follow you regardless, because I think you're one of the best thinkers and also funny people out there with the memes you post. So it's always a pleasure to read up on what you're posting, including the LinkedIn article that we used for this podcast. So great insights here. Pramod, thank you so much. And we'll do a follow-up soon on this one here. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me. I think this was a really good discussion.
This was amazing. We're going to do another check-in in a few months. All right, Pramod.
Yeah.
Take care. Speak soon. Thank you, everyone.